Now, a truck carrying fuel has crossed from Egypt into Gaza. It's the first one to enter the strip since the war began. It passed through the Rafah crossing along Gaza's border with Egypt. Witnesses say 2 other trucks have been parked at the border waiting to cross after the first one. Israel has cut off the supply of fuel going into Gaza, creating a dire energy shortage for thousands of Palestinians. But for the very latest on this conflict, we can cross live to the Israeli city of Tel Aviv and speak with Arise correspondent Karl Bostic. Karl, thank you for joining us. Great to have you on Newsday. Can you bring us up to date regarding what you know about this operation at the Al-Shifa hospital?
Well, that's right. The operation at that hospital, Al-Shifa hospital, is still underway. You showed those comments coming from the White House saying that the U.S. had their own intelligence backing Israel's claims that Shifa and other hospitals were being used by Hamas to conceal its command center with a network of tunnels, especially with Shifa as the main base underneath Shifa. Hours after that announcement, that's when Israel's attack on the hospital began. It began at about 2 o'clock in the morning. So now it's about 12 hours underway. Initially, there was a gun battles outside the gates of one of the entrances of Shifa Hospital. And just to be clear about it, it's more than just one building. It's a complex of buildings spread over a few acres. So in other words, they went through one gate. There was a gun battle at the entrance. Israeli TV's actually been showing pictures throughout the day of Israeli soldiers inside the hospital, the main building, on the floors with frightened employees, doctors and medics, just really petrified as soldiers are filing past them down the hallways and corridors. And they're going room to room. They're looking for patients. They're looking for those babies we've been hearing all about in the neonatal center. And at the same time, on these grounds, you've got about a few thousand displaced people. They've used loudspeakers to warn all men between age of 16 and 40 to, quote, surrender themselves. And they're being interrogated because they're concerned there may be Hamas fighters amongst them. The Gaza Health Ministry also warned the IDF over a phone call. The IDF called the Gaza Health Ministry saying, we're about to enter the compound. He says, okay, well, if you enter, but just make sure you know that there are 2 mass graves at the entrance, one for about 100 bodies, another for 80 bodies, because they didn't have time to preserve or remove bodies. So you have mass graves that are being filled by the hour of people unable to receive medical care. So that's what's happening right now at the hospital. And it's significant that now that they've arrived at the hospital they've been talking about for so long.
Right. Now, still speaking about this attack on the hospital, what is the significance of this attack for Israel?
Well, again, this is not the first time that Israel's talked about Shifa Hospital. Out of Gaza's 30-plus hospitals, 35 hospitals, it's the biggest one with about 500 to 800 beds. And ever since the past, for decades, they've maintained that ever since Hamas came into existence in Gaza, back in 2006, 2007, Shifa has been really the center of their operations through a command center and underground network. And now it's being used not only to store weapons and command center, but even possibly to hold hostages. So it's really been a lightning rod, as far as the world's attention, Israel's attention concerned, because if they can show that this is where there is a command center, if this is where weapons are being stored, if this is where hostages are being held, this will do a lot to mobilize and galvanize support for Israel. If anything, this is a moment of truth for Israel. It has to really show back up its claims about the use of Shifa, as well as the U.S. instance. As one Israeli reporter on TV earlier today put it, if Israel can't prove that they have this kind of evidence, and more importantly, equally importantly, if there's any fighting or gun battle inside the hospital, which the U.S. has warned against Biden, saying we don't want to see any fighting inside the hospital. There was fighting outside the hospital on the grounds. Then the war is over. There's no way that Israel can sustain any worldwide criticism if there's damage done to the hospital or destruction or casualties on a colossal scale of the hospital. So this is really a potential turning point for the course of the war.
Well said, Karl. And after more than 6 weeks of war, at what stage is Israel at right now?
Well, for one, you spoke about their 2 main objectives. One is to eliminate, eradicate Hamas from Israel's point of view so that they never have this kind of threat again. That means destroying its military capabilities. That's why they're at the Shifa hospital today. That's why they've really basically emptied out, evacuated most of northern Gaza. So right now, what they said yesterday, the defense chief, he says Israel is now in control of above ground Gaza. That was very, very specific language because he's basically saying that there are two Gazas. There's the Gaza that you see above ground, the destruction of more than half of the buildings in Gaza City now being destroyed, demolished to rubble. But there's also an underground city, that network of hundreds of miles of tunnels and command center where they store weapons, where Hamas leaders and fighters live, and presumably where hostages are being kept. So now becomes another stage, a third stage, where they now have to, prepare themselves for going into these tunnels or attacking these tunnels, and then ostensibly moving beyond North Gaza, moving to the southern part of Gaza now, where 2/3 of the population, which includes about now 900,000 people, almost 1 million people, have been displaced to the south. So the war could now go to that next stage. They're saying this could take weeks, if not months. But the world doesn't have that kind of a patience to see this really go that much longer if it doesn't yield concrete results.
Right, Rise correspondent Karl Bostic, we do hope that there is an end to the carnage on civilians as they try to undo that underground network. Thank you so much for your time and your contribution. Please do stay safe in Tel Aviv.